Hey,
Hey, here we go. Hey. Hey, what's going on, everybody? We want to welcome you all to the Counterpoise podcast today. I am your host, Everett Stevenson, joined with my other co-host.
Hey,
hi
everybody.
guys. My name is Malik Foster, co-host for the Cowboys podcast.
I am Samantha Adams. Thank you for joining us today. We have a great topic for you, but before we jump into that topic, we're going to go ahead and get into our Black Business of the Week, guys.
Yeah, and today's Black Business of the Week is another fashion designer that we know. Just one second, and as I pull up their website, that you guys can get a chance to check it out here. All right, here we go. And it's Play Nice Studios. They provide a new school twist on the old school style of t-shirts, ultra luxury style brands, some of the vintage brands. Play Nice Studios. They also got the Selena T. They drop pretty much like every other week, so they may have something going on. I've purchased a couple of t-shirts from this brand as well. Real quality work. As you can see, they have the How the Grinch Stole Christmas tee coming up for pre-order. The Drake Certified Lover Boy, greatest of all times. It looks like on this one is Tyson, Ali, and I believe Mayweather. Yep, Tyson, Ali, and Mayweather. So this is a nice little brand. You guys can get t-shirts very reasonably priced. Ships within 5 to 7 days. Good quality t-shirts and work. So definitely wanted to give a shout out to Play Nice Studios as our brand, as our Black business for the week. In regards to today's topic, we're going to talk about a region in the South called Cancer Alley. This is along the Mississippi River, pardon me, and around Louisiana, I believe in particular. There is a region in which there's a lot of oil plants and refineries that's in this area, and it allows a lot of citizens to have an increased rate of cancer. And so if you give me just 1 second, we're about to get ready to go into a video that was provided by Vice and Showtime, and it gives gives us a little background in regards to the citizens of this region and some of the things that they're facing.
All of this land owned by Black people?
The majority, yes. Probably 80%, maybe more.
Environmental racism is a relatively new term, but its effects have been felt for decades. It was coined in the 80s when a majority Black county in North Carolina protested over the plan to put a hazardous waste landfill in their community. Today, we see it with pipelines going through indigenous lands and the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. St. James Parish was mostly sugarcane plantations before the petrochemical industry took over. Enslaved Africans were brought in to work and ended up sharecroppers after the Civil War. When the industrial boom of the 1950s hit the area, there was very little oversight regarding the environmental and health impacts.
You see that one oil refinery that may have been there, from 1930s to 1950, it's now 14 facilities. And that drives out economic opportunities clearly for the communities. You don't see grocery stores, you don't see the barbershop or florist, but what you do see are homes and historic grave sites and smokestacks of these industries.
Look, we all.
So I just briefly wanted to kind of give you guys a background of this region that we're talking about and what they're looking at in regards to the land there and the term environmental racism, in case anyone is not familiar with that. What are your guys' thoughts on any of the things that we just kind of witnessed, guys?
Yeah, I had some thoughts. So I looked at an article about exactly what the video was talking about, and the article is discussing how and where they're putting a lot of these plants, specifically of Formosa, which is a plastic manufacturer based out of Taiwan, that where they want to put the plants is in an 84 square mile radius, primarily in Black areas from 60 all the way to 90% Black areas. So it's definitely targeted towards Black people. It's not like it's in predominantly white areas or other groups. So it's definitely targeted to Black people in this area. And I think, you know, a lot of the pushback is like, oh, the data and the numbers are showing that, you know, these plants are harmful. So how can it be environmental racism, right? So in order for it to be environmental racism, there has to be some sort of damage or harm to the people that they're causing, right? As well as it being directed towards a specific group. But we'll get more into some of the impacts that these plants, such as Formosa and others, have on the community. What are your thoughts, Sam?
Yeah, to echo what you were saying, there does have to be some sort of animus. That's a legal term, pretty much where it shows that the discrimination is directed at a particular people. But when you look at history, right, and you look at different ethnic groups and the way that they've been impacted, like, you know, in recent history, we've seen what happened in Flint, Michigan with the water crisis. We've seen how they've built pipelines through, excuse me, different Native American lands, you know, so that they can go ahead and continue to do their business. You know what I'm saying? And when they do that without consideration of the impact of the people in that community. And the people of the community can't really do much, right? They can protest. There are some remedies that they have, but the biggest remedy that they have to have is to be hurt or made sick or whatever. And then they have to prove that these companies are the ones that are creating the problem that's making them sick, and then they can sue. But they can't really do that without that, right? So I think that it gets to be kind of tough when you start talking about some of the remedies that they've had historically. There have been some, because of the way in which it's impacted the community. Like one of the places that Everett had referenced. So it is a whole, it's 85 miles. It goes from Baton Rouge to Louisiana along the Mississippi River. There are hundreds of refineries. It's not like we're talking about one or two, like an Aaron Brockovich situation or something like that. We're talking hundreds of factories, and the amount of pollution and waste that's being dumped in these areas onto the people of those areas is astronomical. Like there was one where they started talking about, I think they said there was over 600,000 pounds of pollutants that were being dumped into the community, and how it's impacted them. You know, that whole area, that 85-mile radius, I believe is like 49% Black. But in this one particular area, it was like a 5 mile, I don't know, more than 5 miles, but then there's this one particular portion of the parish that Everett was referring to was 81% Black. It's also the part that the gentleman on the video was referring to. And it's just, it's frustrating, right? Because when people argue about it, it's almost like voting, right? The Voting Rights Act. When Black folks will go into their elected officials, like, hey, they're not letting me do X, Y, and Z, or hey, you guys are doing X, Y, and Z, and it's causing me to get sick. They're not doing anything about it because they believe that throwing money at the problem is what's going to fix it. And people are suffering. Like cancer is not the sniffles, you know, and it's nothing really to sneeze at. And the other part about it is cancer is not the only illness that these people are getting. People are getting all these other kinds of illnesses, forms of hepatitis and diabetes and everything else. Some of those illnesses may be cultural, right? Like diabetes and the unhealthy relationship that Black folks have with food. But it also some of that stuff is also triggered by these plants and refineries. I mean, 150. I mean, over
Absolutely.
over 100 refineries is a lot. You know.
No, certainly. I wanted to also say that, environmental racism is not something that only occurs when we see refineries and things of that nature, or plants being born, or being
Nope.
placed or created. I wanted to say implemented, but created in certain areas. It can occur when we also see, in particular, like I know in the city of Detroit, there was an area called the Black Bottom, and it was an area in which there was a lot of prosperous people, Black people that lived in Detroit in like the early, I wanted to say, 50s or 60s, around that area, and they kind of had areas where they would go shop, merchants and things like that. And cities can come and create railroads, or in particular, this became like an area where they provided freeways and things to kind of break up that region and displace individuals who were primarily Black that lived in those areas to do it. And there's another example of lakes, I believe, man-made lakes that used to be towns. Charlamagne the God did a story on this in one of his episodes, in which he talked about how there's about 3 or 4 states in particular. I think New York has one, Georgia has a couple as well, in which there were towns that used to be thriving Black towns that then in turn was turned down and became man-made lakes, where a lot of people may go now currently to have summertime fun in some of these areas where they're not coastal. But these lakes used to be towns that were prospering with a lot of minorities in them, and nowadays they're used and they're underwater. They call them like the underwater towns of the past. And so those are examples in which environmental racism have occurred in this country, and it doesn't necessarily have to be to a fact where it was something as advantageous as the plants are to this region. I believe later on in that article, they have a conversation in which they reference how much money, revenue those plants bring into that region. And I think the mayor, I believe, or one of the city representatives stated that they receive around 75 or 80% revenue from those plants. And so, in a sense, to Ellen's point, like you said, it's not necessarily so much about money, but there is a factor that plays into it, because at that point, we are seeing people put the value of, saying, the city, or bringing revenue to the city at the risk of certain residents, or without displacing those residents in other areas in which they could possibly be able to have a quality of life that doesn't ensure that they have a risk of catching cancer or some type of other harmful disease based on where they live. That's another one in our town too, around Ecorse in the city of Detroit, that has tons of reformeries, and it's right off of 75. When you're driving down, you will see it. You can smell it when you're coming through in that area. So that's one of those areas as well that reminds me a lot of this region.
Yeah, I was going to say, to your point about the incentives bringing the chemical plants to this Cancer Alley, right? That we're discussing. That's the main focus, but it happens throughout the country through the oil pipelines, with the whole Native American situation, as mentioned in the video, and as Ever was mentioned, Detroit, with Flint and other areas, right? The water in New York, they're actually just now getting to replacing the pipes in New York areas with the water. So they're finally getting to do that, and that hasn't been changed in almost a century. So it's good that they're finally changing some of the systems. But to Everett's point, like the president of the St. James Parish, which is the focus of the video that we just put up for you guys, he basically is saying that, these companies are coming in and they're going to be increasing the salaries of people, providing more jobs, double, triple the jobs. But the residents are saying, at what cost, right? Our health, People are dropping like flies. There's a guy in the video. I don't know if we're playing it or not, but basically he said he beat cancer twice. So it's like it's pretty bad. And in the article that I'm referencing about this video about Cancer Alley, guy, he said, when they have visitors, they always leave with headaches from the area. So it's pretty bad pollution. But the president said that studies suggest, there's no environmental problems. It's the average cancer rate here. But the study showed that it was very limited, and they haven't gotten quite the funding needed to actually do a broader study on the residents relative to the pollution. So they've just done a very micro study. I think, Sam, you mentioned it about just where they did the hospitals. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but.
No, I didn't mention it yet today in the podcast, but we did mention it in pre-production where
Okay.
Tulane University did a study about the air pollutants, and it was very high. But the thing about that study, aside from the fact that it's dated, it also was only within the area of the hospital, one of the hospitals in that parish. So, to think you have hundreds of refineries along an 85-mile radius. I keep saying 85 miles. Yeah, it is 85 miles. And you only have this one small area in which they did that study. That's only a fraction of it, right? And so, looking at that, I think one of you guys said that, I can't remember if it was an article or if it was a video, where they said there was a person, I think it was an article that you were referencing, Malik, where said there's a person that knew, just to put things in context, right? Because everybody knows somebody that has had cancer at some point, whether they survived or didn't, right? But this one person knew 50 people who had contracted it. I don't remember if they had passed away or whatever, but knowing 50 people that contract cancer is a lot. You know what I mean? That's a lot of people. And so, just putting things into context when we say, a lot of people are affected. There are people, I believe in the video also, whole families have contracted cancer and things of that nature, which causes them to get sick.
Absolutely. I also wanted to add, there's certain individuals who have contracted cancer multiple times, and they were referenced in that video as well, of having to defeat cancer numerous times and still fighting for opportunities for themselves and their family to, have a good quality of life.
Right. And so, within that St. James Parish, they did do some studies. I don't know how long ago these studies were done, but it does say that that it's estimated to become the petrochemical and plastics project with the single greatest environmental detriment, which provides an estimated 13,628,086 tons of greenhouse gas emissions yearly. So that's how much emissions is being pumped into the environment. That's a lot. You know what I mean? I know here in Georgia, you can't even register your car without getting emissions. You know what I mean?
And they want to double it, Sam. This new deal with the Formosa plant that I was mentioning earlier, they want to double the emissions, the chemical emissions.
So you want to double it from 13 to 26 million. That's a lot. Aside from it just having a horrible effect on the environment as a whole and a planet that we all have to live in, it's also negatively impacting the people in the communities closest to those plants. And the people that closest to those plants are Black people. And the thing about that land, it's not like just Black people live there, right? These Black people own that land. You know what I mean? And they're also creating easements on the land and right-of-ways. For those of you guys that don't know what that is, that means that the government and companies, they are pretty much buying space or just moving people out the way of that space so that they can either help create
like have emergency route.
Right. In one example, create an emergency route, or to put a pipe under the property, just like you guys saw up in I think it was in North Dakota with the Native American land, where they, you know, going through burial grounds and all that. Those are easements, those are right of ways, and in some instances they're absolutely necessary, right, in order for us to have lights and water and things like that. But in other instances, you already have over 100 plants in a particular area. One of the things that I also wanted to say to something that Malik said, to bolster his point, honestly, when they're talking about the economic impact and the amount of money that these communities are receiving, one of the things that they're not really talking about is the negative impacts to other areas of the economy in those areas. Like, because you have so many plants, you don't have grocery stores, you don't have barbershops, you don't have little shops and stores, florists, things like that, where people will want to do that. Like, there are people that want to farm that land. You know, historically speaking, parts of that land were sugarcane farms. And they had the enslaved people working on those farms. And then after the liberation of slavery, people purchased those properties and continued to, at some point, when Black folks started to purchase those properties, they began to till that land, whether it been because of for sugarcane or whatever other kind of produce. There's farmland out there. So think about it. If you have people out there getting cancer just from breathing the air, you also have to question what are those refineries doing to the food that these people are growing, whether it be to sell or just to eat. You know, it's going to have some sort of an impact on the produce as well. And I just wanted to, you know, go ahead and point that out.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that was some things that was noted, because, like you said, it affects the land value, right? So even though all of these people own this land, they might not no longer be able to sell it because they don't have any other little features around them to encourage growth or other ownership in the property.
Yeah, so I agree. The company is clearly only thinking about itself, and the city's only thinking about revenue, right? Like you mentioned, it's only 70% or so above, or between 70-80% of the revenue is coming from the plants. And that president of the council there in St. James Parish, he said that in the video, that basically that's where all the revenue comes from. If we didn't have these plants, what would we have here? But the thing is, there were people that were there before the plants were there. So these people were enslaved on plantations. And then after they weren't enslaved anymore, they were sharecroppers. They purchased the land. They've been there since 1874. An article I read, and a lady said, this land's been in my family for generations. They shouldn't have to leave. They shouldn't be forced out. You know, they shouldn't live under these conditions. So this plant, this Formosa plant, it's known to have committed several violations. They had to pay a settlement in Texas, $50 million for releasing toxins into chemical pellets into local waterways in Texas. They also had to pay $10 million for releasing chemicals into the air, violation of a whole bunch of EPA regulations, and hazardous waste materials as well. So this new company that's getting this $9.4 billion deal, it has a history of committing environmental violations, a couple of them, and they're still allowed to do this, which means that the company is going to benefit the city. So the city is definitely incentivized through monetary reasons as well. And another thing that this company has done that I forgot to mention, it was that they didn't even let people know that they found graves when they did the land survey. So they're all types of shady, this Formosa company. They're all types of shady. They only care about the bottom line, their bottom line, the dollar or the money, whatever currency they want to use. And that's that. So clearly the city doesn't care about the residents. And, you know, they keep referencing a study that the Tumor Registry did where, we don't see any difference. However, when I want to say the University Network for the Human Rights, they found that the area has a 73% higher than the national average cancer rate. So St. James Parish area has a 73% higher. So there's conflicting studies there. The city's relying on one study, even though another study has shown a tremendous difference. So that's another issue that I wanted to present that that area has. Guys, any other, do we have another video we want to pull up?
I'm all set.
Yeah, I didn't, but I did want to talk, excuse me, about how some of these companies actually are violating the Clean Water Act, right? And so you have so many different organizations throughout time. You know, they have stuff going back to, I believe, probably further back, but I know some stemming back to the 70s at least, where you have all these different organizations, which include, you know, the Tulane University Law Clinic and Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund, where they have been trying to fight these companies. There's so many companies, and then these companies make so much money that they have these, you know, they have a couple of dollars to fight the case. But one of the things that we didn't really get too heavily into is that the economic structure of the people that live in these areas, they're poor. Many of them make, I think a majority, I can't remember what the percentage was, but they make less than $30,000. Matter of fact, I'll tell you in just a second. I believe it was, I don't see it, but I know they're low income communities, right? And so, you know, you have these low income communities that are trying to fight these big corporations for their lives, literally. So they have, like I said, Tulane University Environmental Law Clinic is helping. They have something that's called the Sierra Club Legal Defense Fund. There are also, there's something that's called the Gulf Coast Tenants Association and Greenpeace that have also been fighting. They've had rallies and marches and all kinds of things. They have something that's called the Sunshine Project, where the United States Army Corps of Engineers had to fast track the Clean Water Act permits so that the Corps issued a year before they were initially issued. I'm sorry, that they tried to fast track it. I said that crazy. They tried to fast track those permits. But what ended up happening was back in November 2020, they announced its plans to suspend those permits for the Sunshine Project because of the amount of problems that it was going to create for the community. You know, the Formosa Plastics Corporation that Malik was talking about, they continue to be monitored, and the multi-generational disenfranchisement and the exploitation of Black people and people of color is really hard to ignore when you're talking about environmental racism, especially when you have so many people at such huge rates contracting cancer. That's why the place has been coined Cancer Alley, you know, and it's really, really sad. I mean, I get the fact that, you know, it's creating jobs and stuff, but it's not only having a negative impact on the economy because people are not able to purchase things within their own community, like going to get a haircut or buying groceries and things like that, but it's also making people very, very sick, and it's even killing people. And I think that it's important to note that it's doing it at such an alarming rate. And it really needs to be something that probably should have more attention brought to it. Look at how much attention was brought to the Flint water crisis. And here we are all these years later, and those people still don't have clean water. They haven't been provided with any type of remedy for the kinds of damages that they sustained. And that wasn't even just the fact that, you know, predominantly Black, that was just a predominantly poor area. And it's just sad that so many people have been affected and they still haven't done anything about it. I mean, they claim to have, but they haven't, you know? So though that was just some of the different organizations and things that people have done. They've protested, they've sued, but it's like it's exhausting. You sue one company, but there's still 99 others or 113 others that you have to go up against, you know? And I just think that that's tough, especially when the people there don't really have the resources. And that's why I say it's not really like an Erin Brockovich situation, but it kind of is at the same time because people don't really have the money for that. Not to go up against all these big old corporations and the government who keeps providing these permits. Oh, that was another thing. The Trump administration was also sued for helping these one of the refineries or plants to get their permits and stuff so that they could go ahead and build. And it's just been terrible what's been happening to the people of that community.
Yeah, and they're allowing domestic and foreign companies, so it's not even American companies necessarily always in this area, right? You know, it's mainly Louisiana and Texas and Mississippi areas where a lot of these companies are going in to build these industries, these chemical plants and stuff that release a lot of these toxins into the air, the rivers, on the earth. So that's another issue. And one thing I wanted to get into is the city's response, right? So the city's basically saying, oh, you know, we don't see any difference in the cancer rates due to our research, research of other independent companies. Also, they're saying that, you know, they've done they're going to grant the parish, I guess, $5 million for the residents to do a more in-depth study, but these companies have $9.4 billion or so in funding to build these plants. So that's very interesting how, you know, the residents get so little funding in terms of researching for their health, as opposed to these companies that are already shady, have a shady history. Formosa already has a shady history, already has a background of committing violations and regulations, and they're still allowing them to build. So I find that very interesting. I mean, it's clearly all about the money. And it's like, okay, there's some poor Black people here or middle income Black people here. Who cares? You know, we're just going to build these plants. But the hard thing is actually discovering that they're committing environmental racism, right? Because you have to show that intent. They're like, hey, this is the best deal we got. That's all they'll say. This is the best deal. You know, this is a great area for our company.
Not even just that, though. I think
kind
it's
of
the whole
words
thing
like
that
that.
when we look at the terms of eminent domain, you know what I'm saying? The whole purpose of them even having that is for what? The betterment of society. So we can say that, okay, we need this for this whole region, right? So we'll sacrifice your land. We'll come in and we'll encumbrance your land so that we can say that this whole Southeast region can be better, right? Or whatever that is, just the Southern region can be a little bit stronger. So that's why I say, yeah, it's absolutely.
Cancer isn't just compensation. Okay, getting sick isn't just compensation.
No, I understand.
I mean, just
not just
beyond
compensation.
just to be on
and even
the
however much they may have paid them, which I guarantee is probably a small amount because they're going to look at the market value of the land. They're going to say that this land isn't worth much, as we argued earlier, due to the fact that there's no other people coming across. There's no other businesses around. It's not a thriving community like that. So they're going to be able to get it for pennies on the dollars. And then on top of that, get the dollars that they are able to get because of the fact that they get tax credits and other things that's going on in that land as well. But what I wanted to argue is it's not so much that just to say that they'll be getting paid well for the damage that's going to occur. It's more so to speak to how this is what it is for that region and how it is for certain people around this world and a lot of places, not necessarily just that. And I think that's why we have to be more mindful on being able to educate ourselves about things. One, look to say that if you're going to do that, you need to displace individuals within those regions so that they can get to places in which, you know, a cancer rate isn't going to be as high, or their health and their their well-beings won't be as such a strong risk for it. So those are the things that I think that the government should do in those regards, because it's like you're already taking someone's land completely, because now the value of the land is significantly devalued. And then on top of that, you know, you're placing them at environmental health risk issues. So it's like it only seems fair, true just compensation in this term, and because we're using that word, it's a legal term, that means that you have to receive adequate pay for the harm, excuse me, not necessarily the harm, but the damage in which the government takes whenever they take over your property, depending on, like I said, if it's just them building in pipes, or if it's whatever it may be, like an easement where they can have people just coming in and out, or whatever encumbrance that they may have on the land. But I definitely think that there's no way that you can truly adequately prepare people to stay in the land like that, besides just relocating them and or providing them with enough funds so they could relocate. Because short of that, you're setting them up for danger, and especially when you're giving people hundreds or millions of dollars to come be in this region.
Right, and people don't want to relocate. That property's been in their land for generations, since slavery, right? So, you know, there's that. They shouldn't have to relocate, especially when these businesses have enough money to go somewhere where there's nobody at, right? But also too, one of the things that a council member said that I found to be interesting is that, you know, prove to me that they're the ones that's creating this problem, like that their businesses are creating cancer. Here's the issue. You have so many, you don't know whether or not it's one particular business, factory or refinery or whatever that's causing cancer, or if it's a combination of a number of them, or what that situation is. So it also
we also know too, though, as attorneys, and this is the one that starts to get fun, is where, you know, what you can do is bring all of them to the table. And then then that's when you can flip the burden on each other to show that you must now show it's not you, and how much your percentage of toxins was provided into the earth. And they do that a lot of times when you have examples of people who maybe get like the lead poisoning, or not necessarily that, but the one for the paintings. Different painters who maybe show that they had toxins that's in the paint when the painters are doing it. So then they might say, okay, well, we've used this many different painters throughout, you know what I'm saying, our time in this company. We'll bring all of these different manufacturers to the table, because if we look and we see a disproportionate risk of cancer by certain say companies that have painters, then that's how they can do that. They can bring like a lot of individuals from that industry, show how much they bought from each, and then look to see who can either share responsibility for it and or who will be held mostly liable.
Right. But it's fine. But what you're referring to, Everett, is on the back end, right? After people have already been made sick by the business practices of these refineries and from these factories. But the reason why I brought it up is because I'm talking about it as it relates to getting permits for them to even build there in the first place, right? On the front end. And so it's hard when it's hard for them to determine which ones are the ones that are creating the problem. I think in part because they're probably not doing the research, not like they should. They're just looking at the dollar bill, the bottom line, and just moving forward.
It's over 150 refineries over there in plants. It's many.
Right, that's what I'm saying. They're just looking at the bottom line and how much money they can get off of it, rather than looking at the long-term effects. Because here's the other part that we haven't mentioned. Money is also in the medicine, right? So when you have, all these people getting sick from cancer and all these other illnesses, they got to pay for the treatment. And that's another way to generate income from these people getting sick. And it's tough too, because these people don't have a lot of money. So it's really just making them financially bankrupt. It's making them physically sick. It's rough. And although you would think that they would want to just say, forget this, I'm out of here, they have a whole legacy to think about. And they're very attached to that legacy, especially when you're talking about the historical aspects of it. That's just like when Katrina happened, right? All those Black folks that lived down there in why can't I think of the area? Yeah, it was in Louisiana, but there was a particular part.
New Orleans.
No, but there was a particular section right by the levee.
Oh, like the ward? You trying to get that specific? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, down there.
I can't help you with that.
All right.
down in whatever that area is, I'm drawing a blank on it. Pardon me for that. They would create and cause creating eminent domain on a lot of those properties because people didn't have the money to get them fixed, so they were just taking them and selling them to other people. And so, that was part of the problem when you talk about the levees being broken in that situation, which is also too considered a form of environmental racism, right? Because you have all of those Black people that own that land in that space, and they're not upkeeping or fixing or repairing the levees. And then they know this huge storm was coming, and it came, and then it broke the levees and flooded out these people's apartments, houses, and people died, and they just took their property, right? By eminent domain, because some of them didn't have insurance and some of them couldn't afford to keep their property. Or what they did was they waved enough money in their face for them to be like, okay, I'm not coming back. And it didn't do it to everybody, but they did it to a lot of Black folks. And so,
and that's where I was arguing, where we say, like, it's not really going to be just compensation, because to be honest with you, you're absolutely correct. No one wants to leave their land. But if you give me enough money where I can go buy more land in another area, then that's, even though it's not the same as being in the place where, you know, my grandparents and great grandparents lived and owned and farmed, but it is enough for me to be able to, like, it's a lady in the and the article argued, be enough for my family to be able to go ahead and to have a future, right? Because right now she says she's tired, but she got to keep fighting because she's trying to fight for her future generations. And I think if you can have enough where you can say, you know what, okay, fine, you can have this land, but just allow me to go buy land somewhere else. Allow me to go get, you know what I'm saying, acreage and things like that in a place comparable to where I was at, right? And it's not necessarily because we don't want you to just place us out in Alaska or something, right? And you say, oh, well, there you go, you got land, right? But no, like in a comparable place for whatever reasons that they're looking for, whether it's, you know, southern region where it's, you know, nice and warm and they don't have to worry about the cold, whatever it see fit that they may see, or a price that they feel comfortable doing. But I definitely want to go ahead because I think we've all gotten a chance to talk about that. So I want to go into a couple of things. One being our motivational quote, motivational minute. And this is a quote here from Van Jones, in which he said, environmental justice is the movement to ensure that no community suffers disproportionate environmental burdens or goes without enjoying fair environmental benefits. And I wanted to go into using that quote to kind of let everyone know that what we're referring to when we say, you know, adequate just compensation, allowing individuals to, one, you know, be able to receive the same type of land that they had when they are displaced into new areas, to allow people to have the studies and the proper information to be formed so that they can have an adequate evidence to build a case up against, you know, some of their adversaries. Those are the things that I think that would provide that economic environmental justice that's needed for those residents in that Cancer Alley. And now I wanted to go into real quickly to a reminder of our Black Business of the Week, which is again Play Nice Studios. Their website online is playnicestudio.live. You guys can go there to check out their website and the different things that they have. Logo tees, like I said, the Iverson tribute. With got some images here on that. We got the Selena. You know, the AI when he crossed over Mike, you know, which was a really memorable moment for some of our basketball fans. The Selena T, you know, Queen of Toronto music. You know, shout out to my Mexicanos out here. And again, a couple other little teas as well. You can check with them. They always have different stuff coming out of every other week or so. They're also on Instagram at Play Nice Studios. You can find them on IG as well. And I think they have different versions of things that they had and shirts that they may have had on their Instagram also. Within that, though, I just want to go ahead and leave with my closing points. And again, it's just to say that us as a people, we have to be very, and I mean that as a community, individuals that may be coming from areas in which they are low income and thriving to either one, maintain that property that they have, and or two, acquire other property. We have to just be very mindful and diligent on the places in which we are living, locating, and the way in which our government around us looks to advocate for the businesses that they look to bring. As we see in that region, over decades, I would assume that they had continuously allowed more and more plants to come. And I think that's something that citizens have to be aware of when we talk about, at least knowing what's going on within your local government, because this is something that didn't necessarily happen just over time, but it's something that kind of continuously built up. And it's also why I would like us to also be able to be mindful of, paying attention to the things that's going on within your government, because you never know how it can have an effect on maybe later generations. If you just kind of say, okay, I'm gonna just do my thing and not necessarily worry about what else is going on around here. As long as I got my peace, I'll be okay. So I just wanted to say that. Again, you guys can catch me at ThatGuy2104 on Instagram, as well as you can catch us on Counterpoise Podcast, which is on the Counterpoise Pod on IG and Facebook. We go live every Sunday, as well as on Wednesdays we go live on the Instagram. You guys can come out, email us, text us, let us know, or excuse me, DM us rather. Let us know with topics that you may want to hear us discuss, anything that you may want to talk about. Tap in with us on the Wednesdays as we go. Definitely appreciate everybody, showing up and checking us out. So have a good one, and peace for me.
Yeah. My final thoughts are: you definitely, what Everett was saying there, you definitely want to get more involved in city and local politics. You definitely want to check around your local area, see what type of local ordinances that they have, and all of that stuff. So you definitely want to be active in your community, so you know what they're doing, especially in your local city and county, right, area, because that directly impacts you. So you definitely want to see what's on the ballots, who's running, what kind of proposals they have in your local area that may affect you, because they make these stuff public, but we kind of like push it to the side sometimes, especially in our community, like, who cares about that, right? Because it's not really heavily promoted, but it's very important, as you can see evidence in the video that we showed for you guys today, and what we've been discussing with these plants that are bringing in these toxic chemicals into communities. So with that being said, you can follow me at Malik M. Foster on all social media handles. And thank you guys for watching, and take care.
Yep. So my final thought is this. I think one of the things that we have to be able to acknowledge first is that there's a problem within our environment, right? I think that a lot of times people don't recognize how big these issues are and how far they go and how heavily they impact the community, not just the planet, but the community, Black community specifically. Also to Native American lands too, because they're heavily impacted as well. So I think that that's first. We have to first recognize that, and we have to organize, right? Aside from just doing the things that I think Malik and Everett both suggested, that we have to organize and participate in doing what we have to do in order to protect the space and lands that we live in, own, all that stuff. And that in turn would also help to protect our legacy and our history. Excuse me. So, I think, making sure we know it. Excuse me, I had a frog in my throat, ribbit. So we just have to make sure we know what's going on, stay involved, make sure we vote and organize, right? Because we always can't afford to pay a lawyer to get things done. So that's my final thought, just to make sure people stay focused on what's at hand and the things that are actually going on. And so I wanted to just close this out by letting you all know, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for just coming through to watch, check us out. Whether you watch us live or you're checking us out on YouTube, thank my voice for going out because I don't know where it's going. I do want to also let you all know that you can check me out. If you want to follow me on Facebook, you can follow me at Samantha Adams -ESQ. or excuse me, or you can follow me right on Instagram at Samantha Renee _ I'm sorry, Samantha Renee 77 _ ESQ. You can check us out like E said, every single Sunday right here on Facebook Live at Counterpoise Podcast at 12 o'clock-ish. And then you can also check us out every Wednesday for our What's Up Wednesday segment at 8:30 on Wednesdays on IG Live. Make sure you follow, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and subscribe to our YouTube page too, because that's where you'll catch all of these, and you can also catch us on IGTV. So we love y'all. And again, thank you so much for tapping in with us. I'm gonna go ahead and bring us out, and we will see y'all on Wednesday. If the music wants to play. There we go.